There's a familiar moment. Something finally gets easier. A nicer apartment. A car that doesn't need constant repairs. A subscription that saves an hour a week. For a short while, life feels lighter. Then, quietly, the lightness stops registering as anything unusual. It just becomes normal. And somehow, the sense of being caught up never quite arrives. Most people expect comfort to work like a destination. Buy the better mattress, upgrade the commute, hire out the task that used to eat a Saturday, and eventually accumulate enough of these upgrades to reach a state of relief. The math seems intuitive. Reduce enough friction, and the friction should be gone. But relief, tracked honestly over months, doesn't behave like a finish line. It behaves like a treadmill that speeds up slightly every time someone gets used to the current pace. The belief people trust is that comfort is subtractive, that each upgrade removes a source of stress and leaves a smaller total. It feels reasonable because, in the moment of the upgrade, that's exactly what happens. The instant a grocery delivery replaces a stressful after-work store run, the friction really is gone. The mismatch appears later when it becomes clear that comfort isn't simply removed friction, it's friction that's been converted into a bill. The store run disappears. The delivery fee, and the slightly higher per item cost, does not. This is where the structure becomes visible. The visible outcome is a paradox familiar to almost anyone tracking a budget. Monthly costs quietly rise even during stretches when nothing dramatic was purchased. No new car, no move, no big decision, and yet the number at the bottom of the statement creeps upward anyway. The hidden driver is that comfort, once purchased, rarely presents itself as optional again. The heated seats, once experienced, aren't consciously rechosen each month. They're just part of what a normal commute now includes. The streaming bundle isn't reconsidered line by line. It's part of what a normal evening now costs. Each comfort becomes invisible almost immediately, absorbed into the baseline of what life is assumed to require, which means it stops being evaluated as a choice at all. The third layer is behavioral reinforcement, and this is where the contradiction sharpens. The easier life gets, the harder it becomes to notice what's actually being spent to keep it that way. A person who fought hard to escape a stressful landlord and finally signs with professional property management doesn't recalculate that decision every month. The peace of mind becomes assumed, and the fee becomes background noise. Comfort, once installed, stops asking to be reapproved. It just renews. The fourth layer is structural dependence, and it tends to show up first as discomfort at the idea of reversing course. Canceling the cleaning service doesn't just mean doing chores again. It means confronting how much time and energy had quietly been reallocated elsewhere on the assumption that task was handled. Downgrading the apartment doesn't just mean a smaller space. It means undoing a version of daily life that's been built, room by room, around the current one. The upgrade was easy, the reversal rarely is. That asymmetry is its own kind of pressure, even when nothing is currently going wrong. None of this requires excess. This is what makes it easy to miss. Every individual comfort purchase is something a reasonable, even disciplined person would choose. Reducing stress, saving time, protecting health, buying reliability instead of risk. Nobody sits down and decides to build a life that costs more just to feel the same amount of relieved. It happens one sensible trade at a time. Picture the ordinary version of this. A bank app shows a slightly higher recurring total than a year ago, and nothing about it feels alarming enough to investigate line by line. A person switches from an unreliable used car to a newer one with a warranty, and the monthly payment quietly becomes the new definition of a manageable car expense. A grocery order that once meant comparing prices in an aisle now happens in 90 seconds through an app that adds a delivery fee nobody thinks to subtract from the convenience it provides. None of these moments feel like loss. Each one feels like exactly the kind of decision a person is supposed to make once they can afford to. The consequence isn't a crisis. It's slower and harder to point to than that. It's the sensation of having genuinely upgraded a life and still feeling, on a quiet Tuesday, the same underlying tightness that existed before any of it. It's the fatigue of realizing that comfort didn't subtract pressure. It relocated it, converting time-based stress into cost-based stress, which is easier to ignore month to month, but harder to remove once it's built in. Flexibility narrows not because anything went wrong, but because everything went, by most definitions, right? This pattern isn't limited to any one purchase category. It shows up in whichever comfort a given season of life produces. The nicer daycare that buys back mental space, but adds a fixed cost that outlasts the relief of finding it. The home office setup that makes work easier, but blurs the line of when work is allowed to stop. The premium version of an app that removes one small annoyance and becomes, a year later, one more account that has to be justified during a budget review. The object changes. The mechanism, friction converted into obligation, then absorbed until it's invisible, repeats. If comfort tends to arrive by converting temporary friction into permanent cost, then is there a version of relief that isn't, eventually, just another bill wearing a different name? That's what Finance Simplified continues examining beneath the surface.